I would say it's worth watching just for that alone.
TNMP, the Nerdy Misfit Podcast, with your hosts, Connor O'Neill and Matthew Hughes.
What is up, everybody?
Hello. Welcome back. Another episode. Nerdy Misfit Podcast.
Hell yeah.
It's your boy.
Anime of the Month podcast, actually.
Booyah. The 10th one of the year.
Yes. It's crazy.
Happy end of October.
Yeah, so Anime of the Month, if you're new around here, every month we've been watching a series or a movie. Actually, we've only watched one movie, and it was technically 3 movies.
Yeah.
But in 1 month. But anyways, we pick a series, we go through, we just give our opinions on it. It could be old, it could be new. And we've been trying to spread around different genres, so
Exactly.
hopefully we keep that going. This month was...
Mononoke.
And we picked it because it is a horror. It is a horror. Technically, it is a horror.
Yeah.
Not like jump scare and try to scare
It's not like
you. horror.
Uzumaki.
Yeah, it's not like
Nothing
that level.
extreme, but
But it was definitely still in the elements, horror themes for sure.
yeah.
But before we jump into that, we just want to do a quick housekeeping. So
Big news.
if you tuned in last week,
Yesterday.
last week,
Well, last week,
we
yeah.
had
yeah,
the
sorry.
announcement
Yeah,
that
last
Nerdy
week.
Misfit Gaming has started.
Yes.
And the first stream is actually yesterday. So go and check it out. It'll be in the live tab if you want to catch up and watch it. But it'll be done by T. Roy Jenkins, who we actually did not mention in our episode last week with Eddie. But he will be joining Eddie on the channel. He'll be streaming every Tuesday. His plan is to pick a game. He'll be running through those games for the few episodes. Maybe 5-6 episodes, potentially some RPGs that you guys might be interested in, and I'm sure he'll leave it up to you guys, maybe vote and see what people want.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, we're super happy to have Troy on board. We'll have him on a podcast probably this month so you can learn more about him. But also, there is an audio podcast with him if you want to listen to that. But we'll have a new updated one with him video-wise.
Beautiful.
So check that out if you haven't already, and every Tuesday he'll be live. And don't forget to subscribe, obviously, to Nerdy Misfit Gaming.
And the Nerdy Misfits if you're not subscribed.
Yeah, exactly. And without further ado, we'll jump into Anime of the Month. So yeah, Matt, what is...
Boom. Anime of the Month, October. We watched Mononoke. First premiered back in summer of 2007. There's only 12 episodes. Nice, solid, not too much, not enough, you know. Studio, toy animation, and the genre from my anime list is horror, mystery, and supernatural, sitting at an 8.82.
Yeah, pretty high
on
rated.
on the Miami. It's pretty high. I'll give you a little synopsis here. The medicine seller is a deadly and mysterious master of an occult who travels across feudal Japan in search of malevolent, not the Disney villain. Spirits called Mononoke.
Yeah.
Spirits called Mononoke to slay. When he locates one of these spirits, he cannot simply kill it. He must first learn its form, its truth, and its reason in order to wield the mighty exorcism sword and fight against it. He must begin his strange exorcism with intense psychological analysis and careful investigative work, an extremely dangerous step as he must first confront and learn about the Mononoke before he even has the means to defeat it. Now, the medicine seller's journey leads him to an old-fashioned inn where Shino, a pregnant woman, had finally found a place to rest. The owner has reluctantly placed her in the last vacant room. However, as she settles in, it quickly becomes clear that the room is infested by a lethal band of Mononoke, the Zanshiki Warashi. With his hunter's intuition, the medicine seller begins his investigation to discover the form, truth, and the reason before the Zanshiki Warashi can kill again. And that is only the synopsis of the first
I was going to say, yeah, that's only
2 episodes.
That's the first story.
Yeah.
Right?
So
and that's where, I guess the synopsis for this is trying to just pick you up. This is where we are.
Yeah. Does
starting.
not tell you in the synopsis that this is in fact an anthology-style anime. So there's actually 5 stories that happen in the first season. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yes, that is an anthology. You're not following strictly
One
multiple
flow of
characters
story.
going through.
Yeah.
And there is realistically just the one character.
Yeah.
And before we jump into, obviously, like we try to break this down into segments, characters being one of those, I don't find that the character is of the most importance in this series in terms of, like, you're not looking for all this development or seeing how the character progresses through the story. It's more of just a means to show us what's going on.
Yeah, it kind of uses the base of the character to show the universe more than actual
Like
character
the world
development.
and stuff.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, Connor, what was your initial thoughts on this anime?
So I guess this is probably going to be pretty cliche, I think, for people that have seen this series. But my initial thoughts were obviously that it's pretty unique. The first thing you're going to notice when you start watching it is that the art style is definitely not like many other shows. I'm sure there are other shows that have something similar, but not, if you're going to watch 10 anime, you might see one like kind of like a different style. They are very cookie cutter, I'd say, for a lot of the art style side of things. And this one is definitely very vibrant. It's got almost like a filter over it to give it almost like this paper-esque kind of painting look.
Yeah.
And that's just what really stands out. The horror, I'm not a scary style horror, so I'm kind of a bigger fan of this style where it's more like learning about things. And I would say, I'd say the horror elements of the show were more how scary humans can be.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the monsters or anything that's going on. Like man is the monster.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those kind of stories, if you will. But yeah, I liked it. I liked the use, obviously, of like traditional Japanese monsters like yokai and stuff to tell that type of storytelling. And yeah, I didn't. Other than that, I didn't really know what to think. So the initial thoughts were kind of going through that. Music was nice. What about you?
Obviously, we'll get into all of those things as we go through. But I mean, initial thoughts. I haven't really quite seen a series quite like this before, both animation style and design. Somebody you said like the design of it. I have it written down in later notes of like this overlaying effect of like crumpled paper.
Yep.
Like you
For
crumple
sure.
up a paper and then you try to like straighten it back
Yeah,
out.
in my notes I have it. It reminds you of like old school Japanese art.
Yeah.
Or like a traditional ink painting that they do. I think I looked it up. I tried to look it up. I think it's called like sumi or something, which is like that art that you see. Like the Great Wave is kind of in that similar vein of that art. But yeah, like you said, it's like almost like we're watching a live painting as opposed to an anime. Like that's kind of what it feels like, and on purpose.
Definitely,
and it's done very well that way, in my opinion.
And like I think for me personally, like I'm a big fan of anthology style series. Mostly, like there's a couple one that I've seen that I'm like, it was all right. But I think anthology style storytelling is really fun.
I think they're good for horrors too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they make. If you were to like follow a story that kind of just did, this is the monster of the week as you're going, it's gonna feel repetitive. But this way, it kind of takes away because it's more like, this is interesting. We're just jumping to, we're on a boat.
Yeah, now we're on a boat randomly. Now we're in a jail cell.
And we're in a hotel that was once a brothel, like stuff like that. Like it's very interesting, and you kind of get different monsters, if you will, from different parts of Japan. Obviously, in this case, but yeah, it was a good way to tell the story, I think.
Yeah.
Especially as this story is a little bit more wordy. There's a lot more talking and setting up and backstory and whatnot. So I think without it kind of keeps your interest in that. Okay, we're only doing 2 episodes for this story. You only got to keep your now it's a new story. It kind of grabs your attention because you're like you want to know what's going on.
Yeah, definitely.
You want to get that set up so you don't get kind of bored of if you think of a normal anime, 12 episodes being one whole story.
Yeah, exactly. This is like here's 2 episodes, 3 episodes, and we're moving on.
Some of them work
could have been
harder to digest, I think.
Definitely.
But yeah, moving on to I guess we'll talk about its greatest strength, I would say. Actually, I would say there's 2, but this is probably the biggest one, which is the art style.
Yeah. I mean, I love the design of the main character and of the sword. I love the design of the sword. I thought it was great.
When it's unsheathed, it's always pretty cool. And it always had almost a different effect every time it was unsheathed, which was also kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that is affected by like what kind of Mononoke he's fighting.
Yeah, because maybe it needs a different way of slaying it.
Exactly, yeah. I thought the use of color was really well done throughout the anime, especially with the main character being able to stand out in all the frames.
Yep.
Like I said, I think the art style of the crumbled paper effect overall was very unique. I have here the use of lacking design for background characters was different. I wasn't really a fan of it at the beginning, but it kind of grew on me because I began to understood why it was that way.
They weren't also. It's like also
like,
not just CGI things. It was
Yeah.
purposefully done in a different way.
Yeah, but like for those who don't know, like a lot of the background characters at times is just mannequins, basically, like
Faceless
this
people, like,
faceless,
if you will.
Yeah, and like to me when I first watched it, I was like, oh, because like when you're not used to anime like that, my first thought was like, oh, did they run out of time? Or like because of recent history of anime,
Yeah, sure.
I'm like, oh, maybe they ran out of time, or they were just kind of being lazy.
They just
but then,
want
like,
random background stuff.
exactly. But as you watch the series, you're like, oh, like that's actually as weird as it feels. It's important because they're irrelevant to what's happening. They're just there.
Yeah, it's like it has symbolism. It's
Yeah.
there's people in the air being unaffected by what's currently happening.
Exactly, which I think is really neat.
Yeah, it's a clever way of
But definitely
having
at
the
the
background
beginning,
characters for
I
sure.
was thrown off.
Yeah,
I
that's
should
fair.
say. But yeah, what do you think of the art style character design?
Yeah, overall the character design, like you said, most of the other characters are pretty fitting for just like, I guess, feudal Japan, right? That's where it takes place. So you see a lot of top knots and stuff, lots of talking about samurai and a few samurai we see. Yeah, but like you said, the main character does stand out in both design as well as just the way obviously like dress is part of the design, but their colors are different, they pop more.
Yeah,
You could watch the show with the audio off and you know who the main character is.
definitely.
And they don't necessarily show up right away. Like in
It's
some
true.
of the anthologies, like you're following someone and they're
And then, by the way,
They kind of
they're-
appear.
Yeah, well, I think it's like in the incense ones. He doesn't show up till like at
same with
least
the boat.
halfway through.
The boat,
yeah, the
they,
boat one
they
too. Yeah,
introduced all these different characters. Why are you here? Why are you on this
Yeah.
boat? And then I
Then
think they're like the
boom.
6th or 7th character to be like, oh,
Yeah.
this is why I'm here. But you would still know based on the coloring. Definitely loved the art style. Loved the use of both the color for the art style in terms of telling different emotions or when something had less importance or to give dramatic impact.
Yep.
Using duller colors was very smart. And they really played into the art style being the important part to the storytelling,
Yo, yeah, definitely.
which kind of makes like I guess the directorial choice or maybe the direction overall of the show, they really heavily relied on the art,
Mm-hmm.
which goes into one of the not so much a negative, but maybe a weakness of the show, which is the animation.
Yes.
The animation, it's I don't want to say it's bad because it's not necessarily it's purposely almost purposely not done like a full smooth anime.
Yeah.
Right? We have this effect, this art, and it's almost like watching like we said, like watching a painting happen. Almost like a stop motion at times. And, obviously we have, if you're currently watching anime this season, you have something like Blue Lock, which is just still frames and high, just like impact frames. You do see like the mouthing of talking happening, but you don't see the play happening and the animation of this soccer happening. This one,
Yeah.
it's kind of purposefully done to help the story in a way, right? It really lets the art be the show.
Yeah, I have it in my notes. I have a thing I didn't really like was in moments where it like paused, like a freeze frame style shots of erasing something from the frame.
Yes, there were definitely a lot of PowerPoint
It was just
esque
like a
or
pop
just like
sound.
popping.
Yeah.
But with the use of the art and the color, dulling and increasing it, the vibrancy of it, it almost is a different way of animating something. In my
Yeah,
opinion.
I agree with that for sure.
And it sounds very artsy fartsy
Yeah.
and like but it is unique in a way where you don't miss it. And it's not like it's a high action anime anyways.
No.
It's not
Very
relying
talk
on
heavy.
fight choreography, or in Blue Lock's case, it's literally soccer. It's people that are supposed to be running up a field and dribbling and stuff. Like, you want to see that stuff animated. This is not as important. We're having a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth conversations between characters and trying to figure out why the Mononoke is there. Like Matt said in the synopsis, there's multiple things that need to be learned about the Mononoke before the exorcism sword can be unsheathed.
Yeah.
So that's kind
Shape, truth, reasoning.
of the mystery of and the detective element of figuring out why.
Yeah.
I think there's not much more to say really about the animation unless you have something else to add about it.
I mean, I think like you kind of said, like the color definitely helped tell part of the stories or even make you uncomfy at certain points. Like
yeah, for sure.
in the final anthology with the train, when it's all like more dull colors, and then they start seeing like this weird like rainbow-esque color outside, and like you're watching that and you're like, oh, that's makes you uncomfy because of how vibrant it is in comparison to the rest of the shot. That's really only.
Speaking of uncomfy, something that really helped immensely in this show, which I would say is its second strongest point, is the music.
Definitely.
I thought the OST and sound design was fantastic in this show.
I think it definitely helped tell a lot of the story.
For sure, yes. It heavily relied on the art and the song choices, the OST choices to carry the story or carry what or impact how we're supposed to be feeling.
Agreed. I think this definitely, the music itself helped with that like freeze frame slideshow-esque effect, because when you have just two characters just kind of staring back and forth at each other and then nothing's being said, that music helps flow the uncomfortability of the scene.
There was that one I don't have the name of the song, but it was used like the shamisen, like the pulling of the strings, and if you've seen Demon Slayer, you'll recognize that kind of sound. But there was just so many eerie moments where the music was just, it really brought you deeper in. And as we're concluding to get rid of Mononoke, a lot of hype was built up through the music.
But it didn't overpower the scene.
No,
either,
for sure.
Which was
No,
good.
it was it really just brought an extra element to. We've mentioned that music is very important, but it doesn't have to be the star of the show either.
No.
Right? Like, you can have good music that helps carry and kind of make you feel a certain way. I don't know if anyone's ever watched music that doesn't belong on on a movie or a scene.
I love those clips.
It actually makes a scene feel completely different.
Exactly.
Even though you can know what the scene's about. A funny scene I think I've seen recently on a short or something was Harry Potter.
Is it the Goblet of Fire scene when he comes back?
No, it's it was from Order of the Phoenix, I think, when he's writing like I mustn't tell lies.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like upbeat music, and you're like kind of or it was this erotic sounding music, I think it was. And you kind of think all of a sudden it's like a seduction. It feels like it's a seducing
I've
scene.
seen that similar thing, except it's Voldemort, I think, at the end of Goblet of Fire, when he like has his hands like this and he just like pushes his ball back, and then Harry's just staring at him, and you're like, this is why music matters, because
music is important.
uncomfy.
It can impact the feeling of your feelings, like how you should feel for that scene. And I think obviously we've discussed some shows that in hindsight, it's not hard to pick, hey, make sure we have maybe some piano or something for some sad music for a very somber moment or sad moment, and some upbeat music, lots of drums, hi-hat, like cymbals, like for happy moments and stuff. But this show, I could actually remember scenes and remember what music was playing, and I feel like that just brings the music up a grade. Yeah. And obviously, no lyrics, don't need lyrics, just good sound, and the sound design for some of the sounds of the weapons or the rooms that they were in, like the door shuttering, slamming shut. I thought everything was really well done and really well thought out. Yeah, I would agree with all the sound. For sure. And I think, like we mentioned, obviously the animation wasn't stellar. I'd say the animation was like maybe a 6, but the art is like a 9 or 10, and the music's a 9 or 10, and it just amplifies. You almost forget that the animation isn't as stellar as other shows.
I think for me with the music, pretty much the exact same notes. The only thing is like, the intro and outro were fun because it didn't necessarily fit the vibe of the show. Like the outro specifically was just so like,
the outro was definitely, the opening was solid though. It kind of always got me in the mood for the show, I would say.
It definitely helps you get amped up for it.
Yeah. It did a good job, but man, that OST was very well thought out, I think. Very kind of like what's another one that has a really just solid OST? I would say maybe Made in the Abyss has one that's really stands out. Just this like music that just fits the explorative nature of the show. Okay. That one really captures the essence of what the show was going for. So, 10 out of 10 on the music. And like I've liked music from movies. Like you look at like Radwimps and a lot of Shanghai films, and yeah, it's good and it's catchy, but that's like that's almost a different thing.
That's a different style, yeah.
It doesn't have to have lyrics. It doesn't have to be something that you're just like singing along with. Sometimes, if it just fits the moment, it's perfect.
Exactly. Plot and characters. I mean, I got overall all the episodes were good and left on cliffhanger sometimes, which had me wanting to watch more. I think my favorite arc was the incense-based episode.
Incense-based episode was good. Yeah, characters. It's hard to really say for this because
outside of the main character, obviously. I mean, I loved with the plot and the main character. It was fun to like learn alongside the main character on why the Mononoke were doing what they were doing.
Or there were some twists, like the girl in jail.
Yeah,
that one was. I was like,
well, even at the end of the incense one, when you're like, oh no, they've been dead the entire time. Like,
yeah,
it's just,
they're already
the
all
Mononoke
dead.
is bringing them in. I was like, oh, I actually did not see that coming. Like, I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, the storytelling was good, and another interesting part about the series, when it comes to, I don't know if it really, the characters, like we said, they're not important. It's the themes that the characters bring within the story, where we're seeing a lot of like fear from some character we've seen obviously, like we saw the first story, some
adultery stuff.
Yeah, we seen a lot of different sins.
Yeah,
throughout the
sins
series,
is the
a lot of
best way to
sins,
say it,
but we
yeah.
also seen a lot of just things you initially don't think man are capable of, and how they can be led to do such things.
Yeah.
Which is scary. I think that's truly the horror of it, is just seeing both man and women in this show for sure have done just things that humans
shouldn't be doing
when they're pushed to the edge in certain cases. You think of like the girl with her mom. Like there's just scary things in the world for sure.
I did like that the story, like even though it was an anthology, it still felt kind of linear. Where because like by the last one, it's more modern-esque with the train and the locomotives and stuff like that.
Oh, you mean like time's moving on?
Yeah. So it kind of like adds this mysteriousness of like, is this medicine seller immoral? Like he hasn't aged. Like what's his style?
I never considered that, but that's a good point.
Yeah, that's kind of like my thing. I was like, oh, because you look at the first episode and it's very old style, like what Japanese used to be kind of thing. And like I feel like when you kind of look through, even with the incense episode, you kind of see people from different cultures come around. So I just found like, even though it was anthology, there was still kind of like a linear story being told. But
yeah, I didn't notice that. I think, feudal Japan takes place 1185 AD to 1603 AD.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's a good point. It's very interesting. Did not consider that. Going on to just overall positives. I think obviously we mentioned it. Art. The themes overall are very interesting. The music. Using the lack of animation to advantage, using the colors to both stand out and heavily muting them to impact when needed.
Yeah, I mean, the art style was different. The plot kept moving in a way that wanted me. Did you watch it dubbed or subbed?
I watched episodes in both.
Okay.
I think the Japanese was overall better. I did find some of the translation choices to be a little bit more cringe feeling in the dub. But overall, like the main character was done well by both parties for sure.
Does look like there is a Mononoke the movie spin-off. Fun fact, and they're looking at doing a trilogy for it, which seems very random, but fun fact.
Yeah, it's a fun fact. And
negatives, I mean, the pacing, I guess, felt a little off sometimes. And again, like we kind of talked about the animation of like the freeze frame slideshow-esque.
I didn't find so much the pacing because it was anthology, so I didn't really feel like anything was out of place.
That's fair.
And when I'm watching an anthology, I'm not expecting to kind of be as smooth feeling. Like that's just an expectation of the form of storytelling. Obviously, I thought some of the show could be a bit wordy or boring if it's not your usual speed. I think that could be a negative of it. Obviously, like you mentioned, the animation. And I think you do have to pay attention is a big thing too. You can't kind of slip out or you can't really be doing something else while watching it because you're going to miss important elements within each story.
Agreed.
There's, like Matt mentioned, like we have like the mannequins style in the background. There's like certain tells potentially on some of the characters when it comes to the Mononoke. So it's both a positive and a negative, right? It's a positive in terms of the attention to detail, but it's a negative for the average viewer who might want to be doing something else or, you know, falls off because of that more slow build. Maybe you fall off and don't pay as much attention, I guess, is a negative. But yeah, overall, I really liked it.
Overall, out of 10, what are you going to rate it?
I think it's probably like a strong 8.
Yeah.
I could see arguments for higher. I could see why people would rate it 9.
Yeah.
I think if it was like, you know, my first rodeo, we'll say, big thing when I used to rank anime when I was first starting to watch stuff, very recency bias. Like recency would play such a heavy bias in my rating where I'm like, oh, I love this. I love this. So
this
cool.
This is a 10 out of 10. You know?
Yeah, I could see myself giving it a 9 or 10, like outright.
Yeah.
And I can see other people doing it in the other direction if they're not feeling it.
That makes sense.
I could see people giving it a 6 or a 5 or being like, that was boring. It wasn't well animated. Yeah. Right? You have to really pay attention, really get into it, and notice all the details in it. Obviously, good and bad things. So I think 8 is
solid. Yeah.
Above average. Was great. Maybe not the best thing I've ever seen, but I can see arguments for people giving it 9s and 10s for sure.
8 out of 10 as well. I say, I'd recommend it to someone who's interested in exploring anime that isn't necessarily normal for the casual viewer or someone who wants to see a unique style of anime. But I wouldn't recommend it to someone who's just starting out getting into. And
it's kind of a cool way of seeing Japanese stories being told.
Agreed.
Right? It's using horror, but it's obviously using the men, the through the actions of men is the horror, but it's using traditional Japanese yokai to tell that story, which is kind of different. It's cool. And obviously the art style is definitely unique. So I would say it's worth watching just for that alone. To watch something that actually has a style to it that isn't as cookie cutter as a lot of the stuff we get now.
Agreed.
But yeah, so I guess both 8s. Yeah, no, I have no issues with saying that. Let us know what you guys thought of the series if you've already seen it. Well, I hope you had seen it if you're watching this. And also let us know what your favorite part of the show was. I'm curious. Did you like the music more? Did you like the art style? Was the animation too much, too poor where you couldn't really get into it? And with that said, guys, we're going to jump into what will be the next anime of the month.
Anime of the month for November 2024. We are going to be watching an anime.
That's true. We are watching an anime.
Crazy. First period, winter 2014. We're looking at a score of 7.24 on my anime list, ranked by 131,374 users. That anime is called Hamatora, the animation. Now, you may be wondering, what's this about? Well, I'm going to tell you. We got synopsis. The ability to create miracles is not just a supernatural phenomenon. It is a gift which manifests in a limited number of human beings. Minimum, or small miracles, are special powers that only selected people called minimum holders possesses. The detective agency, Yokohama Troubleshooting, or Hamatoro for short, is composed of the minimum holder PI duo, Nice and Mirazaki. Their office is a lone table at Cafe Nowhere where the pair and their coworkers await new clients. Suddenly, the jobs they begin to receive seem to have strange connections to the serial killer whom their friend Art, a police officer, is searching for. The murder victims share a single similarity. They are all minimum holders. Nice and Murasaki, as holders themselves, are drawn to the case. But what exactly is the link between Nice and the one who orchestrates it all?
Yeah, so kind of like quirks, but with a mystery.
Yeah, I'm reading like on my anime list. It says background. Hamtaro is short for Yokohama Troubleshooter. Is a mixed media project which was inspired by superhero comics from Marvel and DC. The project began with a manga series, which was followed by a TV anime series. The franchise also contains a stage play, a novel, and a video game adaptation.
Yeah, it's very classic Japan.
For the DS.
For the DS, of course.
10 years ago, so that makes sense.
But yeah, we just kind of found something that we didn't want to just pick something that's just always a popular show or a high ranking show. So we're trying to
switch it up a little
switch
bit.
it up, maybe a series that people haven't heard of or haven't seen or heard of and just never watched because you know, it just never blew up. So that's what's going on there.
We're watching. Well, you know, right now there's 2 seasons out technically. Each are 12 episodes. We're gonna start by watching the first 12, and then we'll see how we're feeling.
Yeah, we'll mention in a later episode during November if we're gonna be watching all 24. So stay tuned for that. If you're loving it, go by all means go ahead and watch all 24. We're not gonna stop you. And if you're interested in joining, feel free to join our Discord. It'll be in the link tree down below. There's an anime of the month section that you can get via the roles, and you can talk to us, let us know how you're feeling, or also suggest other series that you would like to watch along with us.
Easy peasy.
And yeah, definitely check out the Nerdy Misfit Gaming as well. We're probably going to try and force Eddie and Troy to also watch the show with us. We'll see what they say. But we want you guys to go check them out. Love them. They give totally different vibes. Both Eddie and Troy also are very different people. So we're hoping that maybe
it's going to be interesting for
you guys enjoy one or the other or both, hopefully.
Exactly.
What they bring to the table. And yeah, without further ado, we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week. Bye.
TNMP, the Nerdy Misfit Podcast. Don't forget to join the island by dropping a follow. Thank you, and see you next week.